everyone and welcome back. I'm Kristi-Anne if you're new. Today's video is a video I wait all year for. I absolutely love Christmas decor, and even more than that, I love making Christmas decor. So I hope you guys will enjoy today's video. If you do, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button. Also, feel free to leave me a comment. Your comments make my day, and let's go on and get into the video. This first DIY is super easy, but so cute, and I love how it turned out. So to make it, I'm taking some oven baked clay and I'm mixing together two colors to create a less intense shade of brown, and then rolled it into a log. And then I'm doing the same thing with white, a flesh tone, and a light pink. After that, I'm stacking them and folding them and kind of squishing them together a little bit so that they're attached. And then I cut off the bottom so they're all even, and then added an eyelet to the top of the rainbow so that after it's baked, I can hang it. And then I baked it according to the instructions on the package, and that's it. These are so cute. I love the boho natural vibes that they give. I'm really happy with how these turned out.
These few days go by so fast. I wish I could somehow make them last. Put it in a bottle, stick a label on, saying do not.
These felt pine cones were inspired by some ornaments I saw a few years ago at Nordstrom, and they were so cute, so I knew I wanted to DIY them. So to make them, I took a light colored felt and used a ruler to mark off 1-inch wide sections using a white paint pen. Then I went in and cut the sections out, and depending on how precise you want your scales to look, you can mark off 3/4 of an inch sections along the felt pieces like I'm doing here. And then the next step is to cut some shallow lines where you want the scales to be, and then round off the corners. I found it helpful to use small scissors and just cut all in one direction and then flip the felt over and then round out the corners in the other direction. I did this to all of my pieces of felt, and then took some hot glue and wrapped some of the felt around itself to create the bottom of the pine cone. And then I glued that piece to the pointed part of the cone and then started to glue the rest of the pieces around the egg. You want to eventually start to taper the pieces so that they can cover the entire egg in a layer. Working in sections, I continued to wrap the felt around the egg, and the easiest way to do this is by wrapping and using straight pins to attach the felt to the egg, and then cut wherever you need to start a new row. So that way you're able to offset the scales from each other. And the reason I'm using straight pins rather than hot glue is because it's easier to reposition them when I need to, just in case something doesn't look right. So I continue doing this the entire way up the pine cone, and then toward the top of the pine cone, I needed to cut smaller sections. So at the very top, it was actually just like individual scales. And I also used hot glue on the top row so that you couldn't see the straight pins. And then to make the top of the pine cone look a little bit more like pine cone shaped, I glued some of the scales down.
It's filled up with joy.
And then I used a straight pin to attach a thin piece of ribbon to the top. I love how this turned out. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Moving on to the next one.
Oh, snow is falling down. All the colored lights lighting up this town.
These Nutcracker stocking hangers were inspired by stocking hangers I saw at both West Elm and Crate & Barrel. So I made a couple different versions of these. I went with a metallic gold version and then one that was in glossy white. To make them, I bought a set of wooden nutcrackers from Michael's and started off by painting them. For the gold, I used this metallic paint that I use for pretty much everything. It's one of my all-time favorite craft products. And then for the base of the stocking hanger, I also painted 2 plaques with the same paint color, and these plaques are also from Michael's.
Falling down, all the colored lights lighting up this town.
I glued them together using some Gorilla Glue. And side note, if you do this, you want to use the original, not the white one. I made this mistake and it kind of like puffed up, so I had to scrape it off and do it again with the regular one. And then when they were fully dried, I added some glue to the bottom of the Nutcracker and glued it to the center of the plaques. The last step for these is to glue on a small hook. The one that I'm using here I found at Walmart in the section where they sell things to hang like pictures and command strips and that kind of thing. I did order some museum putty just in case my stockings were too heavy, but they were perfectly fine, and that's it. Who knew it would be so easy to put together DIY stocking holders?
Christmas, a moment we'll fill with love and joy. So beautiful, kissing on a mistletoe, baby, with you.
The idea for this DIY came from the cutest weaving shop on Instagram called 𝐒𝐒 and they have the most gorgeous stuff but in super limited amounts, so I've never been able to buy any of their ornaments. Check them out. This DIY might bring you back to elementary school when you probably learned this technique the first time. I started off by taking a piece of cardboard and then cut slits into both sides of it. Then I took some crochet thread and started to wrap it around both sides of the cardboard. And then to secure it, I taped both ends to the back side of the cardboard. After that, I took some thick wool yarn and threaded it through a very wide plastic needle using a thin thread to get the yarn through the hole. After a lot of trial and error and trying to figure out how to recreate these ornaments the best I could, I landed on just like the regular old under-over technique and used a fork to push the yarn down. So I started by doing 3 rows of weave so that I could use that as kind of an anchor or a base for my tassels. And then for the tassels, I took a small piece of cardboard and crochet thread and wrapped it around the piece of cardboard 18 times and then cut along the bottom side of the cardboard. So I laid my stack of threads over my warp, which I just learned the term now. I honestly don't know how to explain these steps because I'm awful at instructions, but seeing how I'm creating these tassels, you can kind of get the idea. It's actually really easy. So basically, I took the strands from the tassel and wrapped them over the 2 strands from the warp and then pulled them under and through and then pulled them down using the bottom rows to secure and tighten them. I hope this makes sense, but I did this with all of my small little tassels. After that, I went back to creating my weave until it was the size that I wanted it to be.
Moment will fill with love and joy.
When I was done with that, I cut the back side of the weave and then started to create knots with the loose strands.
Need any presents as long as I spend this day with you. So beautiful.
And then to tidy this all up at the back side, I just took those strands and threaded them through the back side of my ornament, which is very easy and just makes it look a little bit more clean. For the actual design of the tree, I created this using roving, which I ordered online. It's basically just yarn before it's been spun. So to thread my needle with the roving, I just took a piece of thread and then used that to pull the end of the roving through my needle. To make the Christmas tree, I started at the bottom right corner and pulled the roving through the back to the front and then across to the other side. And to keep the back nice and to use less of the roving, I went up 1 space and pulled it back through on the same side and then crossed over back to the side I started on. And I did this all the way up my ornament, making smaller sections so that it looked like a Christmas tree. And when I was done, I just pulled the end through the top and I'll secure it after so that I don't have to worry that it will come loose. To make it look more like an actual Christmas tree, I took this copper colored thread, doubled it up and started to add the garland to each side the same way that I added the roving all the way up the tree. At the very top of the tree, I made a star. This will also ensure that my roving doesn't come through because it secures it to the back. And then to take care of the end of the metallic thread, I just made a loop on the back and put the end of the needle through one of the loops of the weave and then pulled it through to create a knot. And I did that a couple times. And then to hang the ornament, I added a piece of twine to the top with some hot glue. And you could stop here, but I wanted to add a few other little embellishments. So I added these pretty gold star sequins. You can do this really easily if you have sequin beads, but I didn't. So what I did is I threaded through the star with a very small needle and then went around one side of the star and then went back through the middle of the star again and around one of the other sides so that I could secure the star. I love the look of these. I think they turned out so cute and it was kind of satisfying to just sit and make them. It was very therapeutic. Definitely something that you can do while watching some Christmas movies or putting on your favorite show.
Falling just like these snowflakes, tumbling down, round and around.
So I made these pillows using a Cricut, but I've done different techniques in the past where I show you how you can add washable gold foil to pillows without an electronic cutter. So I'll add a card here for a video on a tutorial. So to make these pillows, I started off by creating some designs in Photoshop, and then I added some Christmassy embellishments in PicMonkey. When my designs were ready, I prepared my mat with this iron-on foil from Cricut, and I lined it up to the corner of the mat with the shiny side facing down, and then cut the foil to the length of the mat. Then I opened up Cricut Design Studio and made a new project and imported my design and added it to my canvas. For my design, I wanted to make it as big as possible because this font is a little bit tough to weed. So I made my image about 28.5 centimeters, which is as big as my mat will allow me to go. Then I clicked on the make button where it brought up all of the settings to prepare for cutting. For my settings, I chose matte because I'm not using smart material, and I mirrored my image because I'm working with iron-on. And then I clicked continue and connected my machine via Bluetooth and browsed the materials for the foil iron-on, and then selected it and clicked done. So then I just loaded my mat into the machine and it started cutting.
Because I'm falling, just like the snowflakes, tumbling down, round and round.
When it was done, I started to weed the design and remove the pieces that I didn't want. And like I said, this font is a little bit challenging for weeding. It definitely takes patience and time, especially with my other design. I'd say it took me probably about an hour to weed. The font is a little bit smaller and I'm new to Cricut, so I'm not very good at this. A great trick to make this much easier is to take an X-Acto knife and kind of just score around each section or letter, making sure that you don't go all the way through the liner though. That actually helps the process go by a lot quicker because you're able to work section by section.
And the night is cold. Everyone's lighting candles in their homes. Yes, it's Christmas.
After this was weeded, I preheated my iron to the wool setting and prepared my pillowcase by ironing it for about 15 to 20 seconds to warm it up. And the pillowcase I'm using here, I actually got from IKEA. I think it's super cute. I love this like blush pink velvet look. Then I positioned my design where I wanted it on my pillow, and since the liner's tacky, it actually stays exactly where you want it. And I followed the instructions for the iron-on and did medium pressure for 30 seconds in each area, and then flipped it over and did another 30 seconds.
Oh, snow is falling down, all the
So I let it cool completely and then started to peel off the liner. And if any of the parts of the design are not fully adhered, it's okay because you can always go back in and iron over them again. This is so easy. I love the design. I love how these pillows came out. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And again, if you enjoyed this kind of content, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments below which DIY was your favorite. I hope you guys are all having a really great holiday season so far. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye guys.
Merry Christmas.